Hello everyone, my name is Emily. Before I begin, if you enjoy emotional family stories filled with betrayal, justice, and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe because I share a brand new story every week. Now, let me tell you something that changed my life forever. I never imagined that one signature could erase 27 years of memories. The house where I learned to walk, where my grandmother taught me how to bake, where my late grandfather planted a maple tree with me, was no longer mine. My parents sold it, not because they needed money, not because they had no choice. They sold it to my younger sister, because according to them, she deserves it more than you. I stood there speechless. I looked at my mother, hoping she would smile and say it was all a misunderstanding. Instead, she calmly handed me a set of old boxes containing my childhood belongings and said, "Take these. Ashley is moving in tomorrow." That was the moment I realized I had never truly been treated like family. But what none of them knew was that my grandmother had already prepared something months before she passed away. A single handwritten letter that would expose every lie, every betrayal, and change all of our lives forever. My name is Emily, and this is the day my own family lost everything they thought they had won. I still remember the silence. Not the kind of silence you hear in an empty room. The kind that tells you your heart has just been broken. I looked at my father one last time and asked, "So, that's it? You're really giving my home to Ashley?" He didn't hesitate. He folded his arms and replied, "She has a husband, children. She needs this house more than you do." I nodded slowly, not because I agreed, but because I finally understood my place in this family. I quietly picked up my old photo albums, my grandmother's recipe book, and a small wooden music box Grandpa had given me when I was 8. Those were the only things that truly belonged to me. As I walked toward the front door, my younger sister smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of my house." She emphasized the word "my" just enough to make sure it hurt. And it did, more than she could ever imagine. Growing up, Ashley was always the favorite. If she failed a test, Mom would hug her and say, "It's okay, sweetheart. You'll do better next time." If I scored the highest grades in school, Dad would simply say, "That's what we expect from you." There were no celebrations, no hugs, no proud smiles, just expectations. Every Christmas, Ashley received the expensive gifts. I received books and reminders to be grateful. Whenever something in the house broke, everyone looked at me first, even when Ashley admitted it later. Nobody apologized. After years of this, I stopped asking for fairness. I only hoped one day they would love me the same way they loved her. That day never came. The only person who ever treated me differently was my grandmother, Grandma Evelyn. She never compared us. She never chose favorites. Every Sunday afternoon, she'd invite me into her little kitchen. While cookies baked in the oven, she'd smile and say, "Emily, kindness is never wasted, even when people don't deserve it." I didn't understand those words back then, but years later, they became the reason I survived everything that followed. About 6 months before she passed away, Grandma started asking unusual questions. "Emily, if one day this family disappoints you, what would you do?" I laughed. "I don't know, Grandma. I guess I'd just move on." She looked at me for several seconds, then quietly smiled. "I hope you never have to." At the time, I thought it was just another conversation. I had no idea. She already knew exactly what my parents were planning. A week later, I received a phone call from my mother. For a brief moment, I thought maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she finally realized how much she'd hurt me. I answered immediately. "Hello?" Instead of an apology, I heard my mother's impatient voice. "Emily, where did you put Grandma's blue jewelry box?" I stayed silent. She continued. "Your sister can't find it anywhere." I took a deep breath. "I don't know." Mom sighed dramatically. "You've always been so difficult." Then she hung up. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she ask where I was living. The only reason she called was because they wanted something. That was the moment I stopped expecting them to change. A few days later, my cousin Daniel invited me for coffee. After we talked for a while, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Emily, I don't think your parents told you the whole truth." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "They didn't sell the house because Ashley needed it." "They've been planning this for years." I felt my stomach tighten. "What are you talking about?" Daniel looked around the cafe to make sure nobody was listening. "I accidentally heard your dad talking to a real estate agent months ago. He said if the house stayed in your name after Grandma passed away, their entire plan would fail." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What plan?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "I don't know. But Grandma argued with them that day. It was the loudest argument I've ever heard." My hands started shaking. Grandma knew. She knew everything, and she tried to stop them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation I'd ever had with Grandma. Every smile, every warning, every strange question she had asked me before she died. Suddenly, one memory came rushing back. 3 weeks before Grandma passed away. She held my hand tightly in her hospital room. She whispered, "Emily, if anyone ever tells you I've left you with nothing, don't believe them. There will be a letter. A very important letter." At the time, I thought she was confused because of her medication. Now, I realized she had been trying to protect me all along. But where was that letter? And why had nobody mentioned it? The next morning, I drove to my grandmother's lawyer's office. His name was Mr. Harrison. The moment I walked in, he looked at me with surprise. "Emily, I've been trying to reach you for weeks." My heart skipped a beat. "For weeks?" He nodded. "Your parents told me you had moved overseas." I stared at him in disbelief. "What? I've lived in this town my whole life." Mr. Harrison slowly removed his glasses. I knew something wasn't right. He opened a thick brown file and placed it on the desk. "Your grandmother left very specific instructions. She wanted this envelope delivered to you, and only you." He reached into the file and carefully placed a sealed white envelope in front of me. Across the front, written in Grandma's familiar handwriting, were just 6 words. "Only Emily deserves to know everything." My hands began to tremble. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside, there was a handwritten letter and another document, a legal document. I unfolded Grandma's letter first. Her handwriting was shaky, but every word felt as if she was sitting beside me. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I know exactly what your parents are planning. They believe they can erase you from this family. They believe giving everything to Ashley will make her happy. But they forgot one thing. The house was never theirs to give away." I stopped reading. My eyes filled with tears. I looked at Mr. Harrison. "What does she mean?" He smiled gently. Keep reading. I wiped away my tears and continued. 23 years ago, your grandfather secretly transferred the ownership of the house into a family trust. According to that trust, only one person could legally become the owner. You. I couldn't breathe. Mr. Harrison quietly slid the second document toward me. It was the original trust agreement. My name was written clearly on the first page. Not Ashley's, not my parents'. Mine. Grandma had protected me all along, but she had waited for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. I looked at Mr. Harrison in complete disbelief. There has to be some mistake. He slowly shook his head. There isn't. He turned the trust agreement toward me and pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. Read this. I lowered my eyes. The words hit me like lightning. The property may not be sold, transferred, gifted, or mortgaged without the written consent of the sole beneficiary, Emily Carter. I read it again, then a third time. My parents had no legal right to sell the house. Neither did Ashley, I whispered. So, the sale wasn't legal? Mr. Harrison nodded. Exactly. They signed papers they never had the authority to sign. A long silence filled the room. Then he added something I never expected. And there's more. He opened another folder. Inside were several printed emails, bank records, property documents, even text message screenshots. Your grandmother suspected something months before she passed away. So she hired a private investigator. My heart started racing. A private investigator? Yes. He documented everything. Every secret meeting, every forged signature, every conversation with the real estate agent. Everything. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Ashley hadn't just accepted the house. She had helped plan everything. Mr. Harrison handed me one final envelope. This was your grandmother's last instruction. If the investigation proved fraud, I was to file a lawsuit immediately. I looked at him. Without asking me? He smiled. Your grandmother knew you'd tried to forgive them. She wanted justice first. Forgiveness could come later. For the first time in weeks, I smiled through my tears. Grandma still knew me better than anyone else. As I stood to leave the office, Mr. Harrison said one final sentence. Emily, they think they've already won. They have no idea what happens tomorrow morning. I stopped at the door. What happens tomorrow? He calmly closed the file. They're all being summoned to court. And they don't know you're coming. The next morning, I stood outside the county courthouse. The same courthouse my parents had driven past hundreds of times. Never imagining one day, they would be walking inside as defendants. I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of them anymore. As I entered the courtroom, my parents were already there. Ashley sat beside them, smiling confidently. The moment she saw me, her smile disappeared. She leaned toward Mom and whispered, "Why is she here?" My mother turned around. Her face instantly turned pale. "Emily, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Mr. Harrison walked in carrying 3 thick binders. He placed them on the judge's desk. The courtroom became silent. The judge looked around and said, "Today, we are reviewing the legality of the property transfer involving the Carter family." My father laughed quietly. "This won't take long. The house belongs to my younger daughter." Mr. Harrison calmly stood up. "Your Honor, that statement is legally false." He handed the judge the original family trust documents. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading. A few seconds later, his expression changed completely. He looked directly at my parents. Did either of you obtain the written consent of the legal beneficiary before selling this property? Neither of them answered. Ashley nervously looked at Dad. Dad finally spoke. We didn't think it was necessary. The judge's voice became much firmer. It wasn't optional. It was required by law. A heavy silence filled the courtroom. Then Mr. Harrison placed another folder on the table. Your Honor, we also have evidence that the defendants knowingly attempted to transfer property they did not legally own. Bank records, Mercury emails, phone messages, signed documents. One by one, every piece of evidence was displayed. Ashley slowly lowered her head. Mum's hands began shaking. Dad looked like he couldn't believe everything was falling apart. Then the judge asked one question. The question that changed everything. Mrs. Carter, did your mother know about this transfer before she passed away? My mother's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't answer because everyone in that courtroom already knew the truth. Grandma had known from the very beginning. The courtroom was so quiet, you could hear someone turning the pages of a file. No one dared to speak. Then, the judge slowly removed his glasses and looked directly at my father. Mr. Carter, I'll ask you one last time. Did you know this house legally belonged to Emily? My father swallowed hard. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. He looked at my mother, hoping she'd say something. She lowered her head. Ashley stared at the floor. No one spoke. Finally, Dad whispered, Yes. A wave of murmurs spread across the courtroom. The judge frowned. So you knowingly transferred property that did not belong to you? Dad didn't answer. He couldn't, because every document, every email, every bank transfer proved exactly what had happened. Then Mr. Harrison stood up once again. Your Honor, there is one final piece of evidence. He handed the judge a small flash drive. My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea what was on it. The courtroom lights dimmed. A video appeared on the large screen. It was recorded 6 months before Grandma passed away. Grandma was sitting in her favorite chair. She looked weak, but her voice was steady. She looked straight into the camera and said, If you're watching this, it means my family ignored my final warning. She took a slow breath. I know my son and his wife are trying to take Emily's home. They believe I don't understand what's happening, but I understand everything. She held up the original trust documents. This house belongs to Emily. It always has. If anyone tries to steal it, I want the court to protect my granddaughter. Tears filled my eyes. The entire courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked emotional. Grandma smiled gently at the camera. Then she said the words I'll never forget. Emily, if you're seeing this, please don't let hatred live in your heart. Justice is enough. You don't have to become like them. The video ended. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time, my parents realized they hadn't lost because of me. They had lost because Grandma had told the truth. When the video ended, the courtroom remained completely silent. No one looked at me. Every eye was on my parents. The judge slowly folded his hands and looked at my father. Mr. Carter, you didn't just betray your daughter. You betrayed your own mother's final wishes. My father couldn't even lift his head. For the first time in years, he looked like a broken man. Ashley suddenly stood up. This wasn't my idea. She pointed at my parents. "They told me the house was legally mine." Mom immediately turned toward her. "Don't lie! You begged us to transfer it before Emily found out." Ashley shouted back. "You promised everything would be fine." Within seconds, they were blaming each other. The judge slammed his gavel. "Enough!" The courtroom fell silent again. Mr. Harrison calmly stood up. "Your Honor, my client has only one request." The judge looked at me. "Ms. Carter, what would you like this court to do?" Every person in the room turned toward me. This was the moment I had dreamed about for years. I could take everything from them. I could make them lose the house, their savings, their reputation, everything. I took a deep breath. Then I remembered Grandma's last words. "Justice is enough." I looked at the judge and quietly said, "I don't want revenge. I only want what legally belongs to me. And I want my grandmother's final wishes respected." The judge nodded slowly. After reviewing every document one final time, he announced his decision. The transfer of ownership is declared null and void. The property shall immediately be returned to its lawful beneficiary. He looked directly at me. "Emily Carter!" My mother burst into tears. Ashley covered her face with both hands. My father closed his eyes. Years of lies had collapsed in a single afternoon. But the biggest surprise was still waiting outside the courtroom. As I walked out of the courtroom, reporters rushed toward me. "Emily, do you have anything to say after today's verdict?" Microphones surrounded me. Cameras flashed from every direction. For a moment, I thought about everything my family had done. The years of rejection, the lies, the humiliation. Then I smiled and gave only one answer. "My grandmother taught me that the truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs the chance to be heard." With that, I walked away. 3 weeks later, I returned to my childhood home. The front yard looked exactly the same. The old maple tree Grandpa planted with me was still standing. Its branches were taller now, stronger, just like me. I unlocked the front door. For the first time, I wasn't entering as an unwanted guest. I was finally home. Ashley had already moved out. Most of the furniture was gone. The walls were empty, but the memories were still there. I walked into Grandma's old bedroom. Everything had been cleaned, except for one small wooden box resting on the bedside table. It had my name on it. "Emily, inside?" I found dozens of old photographs. Letters, birthday cards, school drawings I had made as a child. At the very bottom, there was one final envelope. It simply read, "Open this after everything is over." My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. Grandma wrote, "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then justice has finally been served. I always knew your heart was different. You never fought to hurt people. You fought because you wanted to be loved. Please don't waste the rest of your life trying to earn love from people who refuse to give it. Real family isn't always the people who share your last name. Real family is made of the people who choose you. Now, it's your turn to build the life you deserve. Be happy. That will always be my greatest wish for you. Love forever, Grandma." I couldn't hold back my tears. For years, I thought winning meant proving my parents wrong. But standing there, holding Grandma's final letter, I realized something much bigger. I hadn't won a house. I had found peace. And sometimes, peace is worth more than any inheritance in the world. 6 months later, life looked completely different. I restored the old house little by little. The broken fence was repaired. Grandpa's maple tree was healthier than ever. Grandma's kitchen smelled like fresh cookies again. For the first time in years, the house finally felt like home. One quiet Saturday morning, there was a knock at the front door. When I opened it, my parents were standing there. They looked older, tired, almost unrecognizable. My father spoke first. "Emily, I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're asking for a chance." For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then my mother began crying. "I spent years choosing one daughter, and in the process, I lost them both." Ashley slowly stepped forward. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. "I'm sorry. I was so busy trying to win. I never realized I was destroying my own family." There was another long silence. Then I remembered Grandma's last words. "Justice is enough." I smiled gently. "I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You'll always be my family. But things can never go back to the way they were." My father nodded. "I understand." Before leaving, he looked back at the house one last time. "This house always belonged to you. I was just too blind to admit it." They quietly walked away. I watched them disappear down the driveway. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I simply closed the front door, looked around the home that Grandma had protected, and whispered, "Thank you, Grandma." Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It isn't a house. It isn't land. It's having one person who believed in you, even when no one else did. If this story touched your heart, please let me know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Emily's place? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional family stories with unexpected twists. Until next time, take care of yourself and never stop believing that the truth always finds its way. A year later, people in town still talked about what happened to the Carter family. Some said it was the biggest family scandal they'd ever seen. Others simply called it karma. But for me, it was never about revenge. It was about finally being free. One afternoon, I received a small package with no return address. Inside was an old family photo. It showed me Ashley, Mom, Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa. On the back, someone had written just one sentence. "Some families are broken by greed. Others are saved by truth." There was no signature, no explanation. I smiled, folded the photo carefully, and placed it beside Grandma's last letter. Those 2 pieces of paper reminded me of everything I'd survived. Today, children laugh in the same backyard where I once cried. Grandpa's maple tree gives shade to a new generation. Grandma's recipes are still baked every Sunday. And every time I smell fresh cookies, I remember her voice. Kindness is never wasted. She was right, and kindness didn't make me weak. It made me strong enough to walk away from hate without losing myself. If you're listening to my story today and you've ever felt forgotten, rejected, or treated unfairly by the people who were supposed to love you, please remember this. Your value is never decided by someone else's opinion. Sometimes, the people who fail to see your worth are the very people who lose you forever. Thank you for spending your time with me. My name is Emily, and this was the story of how my family took away my childhood home, but never managed to take away my future. See you in the next story.